Good afternoon, Blast Kiddos. We've got a fun science experiment to do this afternoon. It does not take a lot to do this experiment either. In fact, you may even have the ingredients at home already, but in your goodie bags, you have a smaller bag inside that has 1.5 cups of cornstarch, and you have a recipe for Oobleck. Now, you have a video that's uploaded for a story written by Dr. Seuss that talks about Oobleck as a fun read, and I encourage that you listen to that story, and you might even be able to take an AR quiz on it when you come back to school. But Oobleck is kind of considered a science experiment, and the reason why is I'm sure in all of your classrooms you have discussed the 3 states of matter, and you know that matter can be a solid, a liquid, or a gas. But Oobleck does not follow Newton's law about that. In fact, it's not a solid or a liquid. It's kind of its own thing. And there are some other things that fall in that category, but Oobleck certainly does. So, to make Oobleck, follow your recipe, and this is all you do. You need 1.5 cups of cornstarch. You're going to need, it's already measured out for you, but use a measuring cup to get 1 cup of water, and that water can be just regular room temperature tap water, okay? You're going to need a bowl for mixing, and you're going to need something to just keep your area clean. So if you're working on the kitchen counter, Mom might be okay with you just having to wipe it down afterwards, or if you're outside, it may not matter at all. But since I'm sitting where a tablecloth is at, I'm going to cover my area up because this can get a little bit messy. So, with that in mind, here is what we are going to do. I'm going to get my area prepared. I'm just going to fold out my plastic sheeting that I have so I don't make a big mess. Now, if you do drop this or get it on your clothes or anything like that, the nice thing about Oobleck is it washes completely off and comes clean. It will not stain anything. The only way that Oobleck can actually stain is that sometimes people will put some food coloring in it to give it a color, and that's okay. But food coloring can even kind of stain your hands if you've ever gotten food coloring on you before. If you want your Oobleck to have a color to it, use a tempera paint or something like that over food coloring. Or just don't do anything at all. I'm not going to do anything. It's just a lot of fun to play with and see what happens. So, following the recipe, remember we need 1.5 cups of cornstarch. Now this cornstarch, kind of has the consistency of like flour. If you've ever dealt with flour, it kind of has such a fine powder that it can kind of make a mess, and that's why I kind of needed this. So this measuring cup is just 1/2 cup, so I'm going to do this 3 times to get my 1.5 cups. Okay, and so you already have approximately 1.5 cups in your bag, so that you can just dump that in a bowl. So 1.5 cups, and that's probably about 1.5 cups. I'm going to keep that handy just in case I mess up my measurement, and I can add a little more to it. So, then we need 1 cup of water, and we're just going to dump that into our bowl. Remember, it doesn't have to be warm water or cold water, just regular room temperature tap water out of the faucet. It's just fine. I have a fork to show you what will happen if you try to start mixing this. You can't really use a fork and get it to mix all the way. This is one of these activities where it just kind of, it's like concrete and it just starts to get stuck. So what I'm going to do is we've got to get our hands dirty. So I wanted to show you, you're going to have to take all that kind of stuff like that off and get your hands down into it. Because if you try to mix it with something, it's just like concrete, but you can sort of start seeing what happens with it. So get that hand down in there, and it's going to feel weird. It's going to feel gooey, but then hard at the same time. And remember, it's because it does not follow those laws of matter. Oobleck can be a solid and a liquid at the same time. And so it does not fit into that category. Oh, I made a mess, but don't worry, it can come up. It'll clean up just fine. So really you just kind of start working it in there, getting that water mixed. If you feel like it's not mixing well at all, you might need to add a little more water, but hopefully you shouldn't have that problem because I already measured out your cornstarch for you. So So as you can see, I have this, and it's the perfect consistency it needs to be. I want to show you what happens when you get this mixed up. Remember, it's not a solid or a liquid. It does not follow those laws of matter. So you can see it looks like I should be able to pick this up no problem. So I'm going to try to get it where the camera can see. I'm going to roll this up in my hand, try to grab it all as one big ball, and then look what starts to happen. It turns back into a liquid, and it runs out. It's so cool to play with. And then as you drop it in the ball, it's just like it's turning back into a gooey liquid, isn't it? So it's really cool. So I love to think about Oobleck when I teach the states of matter, because you have a solid, and you can hold it like this, but then it starts to turn quickly back into that gooey liquid again. So, like I said, you can make this a color if you want to, but you don't have to. So that's like it's like a big ball. I've got it, and then it starts to turn back into a liquid. You could play with this for hours. It's just addictive. It's so fun. So if you want to keep your Oobleck so you can keep playing with it later and days later, all you have to do is seal it in a good sealed container, like a good Ziploc container. Ziploc bag probably is not the best for this because, well, it is kind of a liquid still. So just keep that in mind. Oh, look, you can break it. Oh, and now it's liquid again. It's so fun. So I hope you all enjoy this. And if you ever want to make it again, remember, just cornstarch, a little measuring cup and some water, and you'll have your recipe. Don't forget to put your recipe in your recipe book that you've got from Blasto, okay? Have a great afternoon, guys.